Ladies and gentlemen, it is a simple fact that alcoholics can get well. It's also a simple fact, but not known by too many people, that we can do a few things to help them get well. And this evening, I would like to share with you a few magnificent things that I was privileged to pick up some years ago from a beautiful lady that I was privileged to work with for 3 years, Mrs. Gertrude Nielsen. She worked under Dr. Isidore Turk in the Division of Alcoholism Control for the state of Maryland, and after some years under him, she was asked by him to write out what she had learned. Gertrude was a truly humble woman. She was not out to impress anyone, so she didn't write a book. Did you ever notice when somebody has a marvelous idea, it takes them 412 pages to say it? Everybody writes books. Gertrude, being a woman of eminent practicality, wrote it all on one side of one sheet of paper. 10 declarative sentences. They were nothing but a list of do's and don'ts. And the only thing I have done is use all of that material, but I have slightly rearranged it into 8 guidelines, as I call them, and I'd like to share them with you this evening. I would like to preface my remarks with this one. They are not guaranteed to do anything. They are not a magic wand that if you use them, they'll work. I have experienced a lot of discouragement after talks like this. You'd be walking out and somebody would stop me almost in anger and say, "I've tried them all, he's still drinking." And the only thing you can say is, "At least you tried. At least you tried." Now, please, again by way of preface, I think that we all should understand that when we listen to anyone say anything, we listen through our own ears. And when we look, we see through our own eyes. I know exactly what I'm going to say this evening, and I know exactly what the words and the concepts mean to me. But I don't know how you're going to hear them. One night I was in the home of a friend of mine up in Seattle, and we were talking about this very thing of point of view. It is a simple truism that two people can look at exactly the same thing and see opposites. The classic story they tell in the world of alcohol is about the orchestra leader at a society wedding. He was playing at the reception, and right in the middle of a waltz, he stopped the music. He whirled around, he was beat red, he was mad as he could be. He said, "Who called my piccolo player an SOB? Some old drunk in the middle of the floor said, "Who called that SOB a piccolo player?" Now that's about 900 years old, but it illustrates the point. So I was talking with Bill, and I picked a magazine up from the coffee table between us. I just held it up and asked him to tell me what he was looking at. He said, "A red-bordered magazine, about 8 by 10. I'm looking at a picture of the President of the United States. Over his head is the word time and a date." I said, "Now I'll tell you what I'm looking at. A white-bordered magazine, about 8 by 10. I'm looking at a picture of Napoleon mounted on a horse. And under it is an ad for Courvoisier cognac." Ladies and gentlemen, we were both looking at the same magazine. But you see, he was looking at it from his point of view, and I was looking at it from mine. They tell another story about that bishop's older brother. He was a multimillionaire, and at the age of 98, he announced that he was going to marry a 19-year-old child. Well, of course, they got to arguing with him about it and trying to talk him out of it, and he wouldn't be talked out of it. And after about an hour, his lawyer, in complete disgust, he just got up and he said, "Look, old buddy, you do exactly as you want to do." But he said, "Just remember this, some of these May, December weddings have proven to be fatal." And that stopped the old man for a minute. He thought about it for a long while, and then he made up his own mind. He simply said, "Well, if she dies, she dies." You look at it your way, he look at it his way. All right. So you're going to hear me with your ears, and I'm going to hear me with my ears. And with that as a preface, we may as well begin. Guideline number 1. Acquire proper attitudes toward the alcoholic. Now, there's a principle that underlies this guideline. It's the simplest thing on the face of the earth. You are not about to help somebody who knows that you despise him. Don't you know when somebody hates you? You can believe this or not, but an alcoholic can smell your attitude. He can be 3/4 unconscious, and he knows whether you care or whether you condemn. Now, please, what I'd like to do this evening is spend most of the time on this first guideline, because without it, the other 7 don't mean anything. I'd like to discuss with you attitudes in general and then ask you, if you'd be so kind, as to look at your attitudes. Now, I mean, that includes recovered alcoholics as well as non-alcoholics. Look at your attitudes toward every single aspect of alcohol. Drinking, drunkenness, alcoholics, even toward alcohol itself. And then we'll examine a few of the sources of our attitudes to show you why they are just as strong and emotional as they are. First of all, attitudes in general. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two things that I'd like to share with you. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I only know what I've learned. Number one, the attitude is the father of the action. The attitude is the father of the action. What I mean by that is this. Most of us in this room are intelligent men and women. I'm sure you do your jobs intelligently. I'm equally sure that you shop, save, budget, and provide for your kids' futures intelligently. But ladies and gentlemen, in every other aspect of your lives, you're almost governed by your likes, your dislikes, your opinions, and your attitudes. Face it, what you like, what you dislike, determines what you choose from a menu. The kind of clothes you buy. What you do with your vacations. And when it comes to people, oh brother, if I like you, I will bend over backwards to rationalize your shortcomings. Love is blind. Somebody once said marriage is an institution for the blind. If I do not like you, I'm almost eager to believe the worst. Now, I don't want to be that way, but I am, and so are you. That's something we have to fight till we die. Second thing about attitudes in general, we don't have them, they have us. If you want to prove it, try to get rid of one. You know what a physical habit is? It's something that has become a part of you through repetition. For example, the way you put a coat on. I always get into a coat right arm first. Now, I can get into one left arm first. Give me about 5 or 10 minutes with a little help. Take one of your physical habits, and for the next 3 days, do it the opposite way. It'll drive you crazy. Now, you know what an attitude is? That's a habit also. It's a habit of thinking, it's a habit of feeling, it's a habit of judging. And ladies and gentlemen, they're going to die about an hour after we do. We don't have them, they have us. He who is convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I'm not a fool, don't take me for one. I do not delude myself into believing that within the space of an hour or so, I'm going to change attitudes that you've had all your life. If I've held on to something for 32 years and you disprove it, it's going to die a slow death, if it dies at all. Case in point, man went to see a psychiatrist one time who asked him what the trouble was. The fellow said, "Doc, I think I'm dead." Now, the doctor had never had one of them before. He spent about an hour with him, and he got nowhere. He was intrigued with this patient. He said, "Look, I've got to see you again." The fellow said, "No problem, Doc. When do you want to see me?" He said, "In 30 days. Every day, if you will, 3 times a day, look into a mirror and say out loud to yourself, 'Dead men do not bleed.'" He did. He came back at the end of 30 days. He said, "Doc, I've done exactly as you told me to. 90 times, dead men do not bleed. Didn't miss a one." Doctor said, "Fine, come here." He took the man's left hand, he isolated his index finger, took a pin, jabbed it, and drew a drop of blood. And the man stared at it and said, "Good heavens, doctor, dead men do bleed." Now, that's what we deal with when we deal with attitudes, and I know that. Now, please, let's get down to it. Let's examine our attitudes toward every aspect of alcohol. Let's take the highly emotional phenomenon of drunkenness. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think or feel, or what is your reaction to a drunk? My initial reaction, and if I live to be 1,000, it'll be true, is very brief. It's almost non-existent, but it's there. Fear. From the time I was a kid, I was afraid of my father when he drank. When you see a drunk, what do you feel? What do you think? Does it ever dawn on you to question what kind of drunkenness it is? You know, there are 2 kinds. One results from alcohol abuse, the other results from alcoholism. Those of you, for example, in the room who are social controlled drinkers, you can choose to do one of 3 things. You can choose not to drink. No, thank you. You can choose to drink a certain amount and quit, or you can choose to get drunk. The alcoholic drinks the way he drinks because he can't not drink that way. When you see a drunk, does it ever dawn on you to question what kind of drunkenness it is? But apart from that, let's look at the attitude. What do you think of drunkenness? Is it funny? I think you've gathered by now I'm not a prude. I like a good story. And some of the most hilarious stories I've ever heard are about drunks. They are funny. drunk going the wrong way on a one-way street, and the cop stopped, and he said, "Didn't you see those arrows?" Drunk says, "Arrows?" He said, "Good heavens, officer, I didn't even see the Indians." He got out of his car, he put a nickel in the meter, turned it, went up to 60. He said, "Gracious, in a day and a half, I've lost 182 pounds. My own all-time favorite is about the dear little old lady walked into a bar with her pet goose under her arm, and some lush said, "What are you doing in here with that pig?" She said, "That's a goose, young man." He said, "I was talking to the goose." All right, you can keep these up forever. Now, my point. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you laugh at when you laugh at a story, whether the subject matter is alcohol, sex, race, or religion? What is funny? Isn't it the twist at the end? Jokes usually are neither moral nor immoral. The only thing that should prevent you from telling a story is if it's offensive to somebody. Now, please, do you see the difference between laughing at a drunk story and laughing at a man or woman because he or she is drunk? There's a gigantic difference. My point is this: where you laugh at drunkenness, you approve it and you condone it. And where you condone the abuse of alcohol, you have a very high rate of alcoholism. Face it, if I get drunk and you laugh, I'll get drunk again. If I get drunk and you say nothing, I'll get drunk again. Do you believe drunkenness is evil? I can see where an alcohol abuser should be judged morally, but guess who gets judged? The alcoholic who beats up his kids. We judge people through their behavior, but the most difficult thing on earth is to see that the obnoxious behavior of the alcoholic is dictated by his disease. He's the one we judge, and the one who should be judged gets off. Do you believe drunkenness is evil? Do you know you can destroy another human being with your tongue? You can tell lies, that's called slander, or worse, you can tell the truth, that's called detraction. Did you ever begin a conversation this way? "Hey, did you hear about so-and-so?" And then we dump the garbage. Somebody says, "What are you bringing that out for?" And then we justify it. "Well, it is true." We can do that without batting an eye, and we condemn some poor alcoholic to the pit of hell. And yet we give real care to someone dying of cancer. We condemn someone dying of alcoholism. What do you think about drinking? Is it evil? Let me tell you something about morality, ladies and gentlemen, and the human being. If I believe something is immoral and you're doing it and I'm not doing it, I'm better than you. Now, I don't want to be that way either, but I am. So are you. If you're doing something beneath me, you are beneath me. And the alcoholic does things that are beneath us, so he is. How about drinking? Just the ingestion of alcoholic beverages. Do you believe it's evil? A lot of people do. For those who believe that drinking is evil, they have just passed judgment on about 50% of all humanity for whom bread and wine or bread and beer are staples of life. And about 3 or 4 major religions who use wine in the very worship of God. My friends, you don't know whether I'm a good guy or a bad guy, but am I evil because I use wine at Mass? Now let's get down to it. What are your attitudes toward alcohol? Some people pass moral judgments on an inanimate object. Can alcohol be any more evil or good than that carpet? The attitude is the father of the action. Where I believe that alcohol is evil, I call it such things as demon rum, devil's brew. And then somebody wrote that gigantically huge hit, "The lips that touch liquor will never touch mine." Now, what do you think of alcoholics? Are they really sick? Really? The American Medical Association defined alcoholism as a disease in 1955. We still judge it on moral grounds. There's that attitude. Let's look at some of the sources of our attitudes. Where do they come from? How do we think and feel the way we do? What's behind it? The primary sources of all of our attitudes: parental and religious in nature. I learn from my parents who teach me what they believe. What I'd like to do now is just examine a few religions, their beliefs, and the results of those beliefs. please understand me. I'm not here to criticize anybody's religious beliefs. I have a couple. What I'm asking you to do is take your emotions, put them in your pocket, and just coldly look at the religious belief and the result. Let's take God's chosen people, the Jews. They drink wine from birth till death. At table and in their religious ceremonial, they have practically no alcoholism. Why in the name of heavens we don't learn from them, I don't know. The reasons, I think, are fundamental, basic, almost simplistic. Number one is their attitude toward alcohol itself. They believe wine to be the gift of God that gladdens the hearts of men. They therefore use it accordingly. They do not abuse it. It just isn't done. You don't do it. A Jew would no more dream of abusing alcohol by getting drunk than he would dream of abusing an automobile by driving 120 miles an hour through a schoolyard. You just don't do it. Let's take some Christian religions that condemn, well, first of all, that condone the use of alcohol, and then a few that condemn the use of alcohol, and we'll look at the results. Let's take Roman Catholics and our Lutheran and Episcopalian cousins. We condone the use of alcohol almost to a point of abuse, until later years now where we're learning something about it. We have a very high rate of alcoholism. Admittedly so. Some clown once said, where there are 4 Catholics, you usually find a 5th. Now hold on to your dentures. Some religions, Baptists, Mormons, at least until recently Methodists, and let's take some non-Christian peoples, the Muslims. They condemn the use of alcohol. They have a sky-high rate of alcoholism. Our race, our cultural, our social background plays a prominent part in our attitudes toward alcohol and its use. Most of us, ladies and gentlemen, I presume, are from a European background of one kind or another. When our forefathers came over here, they brought all of their traditions with them, including their drinking traditions. Now, for people who have to work hard, and most of our forebears had to work hard in order to eat, those who work hard also play hard, sin hard, and drink hard. And their traditions have been passed down. Case in point, my best friend is married to a little Polish girl from South Baltimore whose daddy worked in the steel mills. And Nancy knew that when she grew up, she'd marry a man like her father. He would work hard all week, turn the paycheck over on Friday, get drunk over the weekend, go to work on Monday. Over. She simply took it for granted. It's what happened in her house, it's what happened in her neighborhood, and it's what happened in her life. You know where your strongest source of attitudes is? Personal experience. Everybody in this room knows an alcoholic. And everybody in this room has been deeply affected by an alcoholic. My friends, do you know that over 50% of recovered alcoholics come from an alcoholic parent or two? And almost all of them swore, I'll never drink like my father. It'll never happen to me. I won't even touch the stuff. Sitting ducks. Sitting ducks. Case in point, and then we'll go on. There's a nurse back in Baltimore who has done 21 years of work in emergency rooms. This is her background. As an orphan, she was raised by her aunt and her wife-beating, child-beating alcoholic uncle. The result was predictable. She sees her uncle and every sick alcoholic they wheel into that hospital, and she treats him accordingly with utter contempt. Is her attitude wrong? Yes. Is it understandable? You bet your life it is. Are our attitudes wrong? Yes. The only difference is degree. Ladies and gentlemen, alcoholism is a mystery. Nobody knows everything there is to know about it. And the mistakes we make are made on what we don't know rather than what we know. We all make mistakes. What are we going to do about this attitude thing? What attitude should we have? Well, let's begin negatively, what they shouldn't be. Number one, God Almighty has not yet gone on vacation and appointed either you or me to fill in. We are not put on this earth to judge people. Now, I'm pretty good at it, but that ain't why I'm here. Number two, all you have to do is answer this question. What can I do to help? What can I do to help? My answer is very clear. I've been given permission and an assignment to function full-time in alcoholism. I don't know what your answer is. Find your own. Now, please, before we leave attitudes, if the primary source of all attitudes is parental, where do you think your kids are going to get theirs? I mean about everything. Who of you in this room would want a son or a daughter to grow up to be exactly like you? Good Lord, that's terrifying. I wouldn't want anybody to grow up to be exactly like me. So much for attitudes. Number 2, learn to recognize the disease through a knowledge of its symptoms. Now, the principle behind this guideline is the simplest thing on the face of the earth. I can't help you for your alcoholism unless I see you've got it. What sense would it make for me to say to one of you, I think you better see a doctor about that boil on your neck, unless there's a boil on your neck? How can I help you for your drinking problem unless I see you have one? Now, how are we going to learn alcoholism? Ladies and gentlemen, please believe this is the easiest thing on the face of the earth. You can learn most of a working knowledge of alcoholism in about a day and a half. There are books, pamphlets, films, lectures, workshops, seminars, institutes of alcohol study. By the way, the best literature is AA pamphlets. Number 1, they're brief. You can read one in 20 minutes. Number 2, they're free. Number 3, there's not a wasted syllable, because number 4, they're written by pros who have been there. Where do you learn anything best? Ask the man that owns one. If you're going to buy a pair of roller skates, you don't go to a Cadillac owner and ask about performance. You want to know something about alcoholics? Go to where they are. Go to where they are. So I'm inviting everybody to some open AA meetings. They are just that, open, when announced as such. They're open to interested people. A lot of non-alcoholics who would, let's say, have a mother dying of cancer would read everything they could get their hands on about it. My youngest sister has 7 children. The 6th was born a dwarf. When that kid was born, everybody in the family read everything they could get their hands on about dwarfism. Oddly enough, somebody's got an alcoholic in the family that have been frustrated and screaming for 17 years, and they haven't bothered to find out anything about it. The paradox of the thing is unbelievable. It's a weird thing to look at non-alcoholics and say, come to an AA meeting. Now you want to know something about attitudes? Most non-alcoholics wouldn't get caught dead at an AA meeting. Can you see them walking in there? Who's looking? And hold it. You get inside, and this is the big one. How will they know I'm not one? Attitudes are there. What I'd like to do here is give all of you a working knowledge as to what an alcoholic is, and we'll point out a few early symptoms, because, ladies and gentlemen, a moron can diagnose it in the latter stages when he's about dead. And you don't need brains to diagnose it. You need a pair of eyes. If a child can diagnose it, you ought to be able to. You want to know what an alcoholic is? Go into the home of an alcoholic and talk to the kid. Kids just don't say things like, my mother and dad are always fighting. Sometimes he hits her. I don't bring kids home from school anymore. I despise weekends. I have to be there. The kid gets right to the heart of the matter and says the obvious. My daddy drinks too much. That's what's wrong in this house. You know what an alcoholic is? Let me give you, for instance, up in Alaska on one of these radio talk shows from 10 to midnight, I was called at 11:30 by a young fellow about 22. He said, Father, I just drink beer. He was drinking at the time. I said, are you drinking now? He said, yes. He said, I drink a lot of beer, usually a 6-pack or twice that much every night, and on weekends I do a little heavy drinking. But he said, now, I've never lost work. I've been commended for my job. I don't have hangovers. On and on he went. He went on for about 8 minutes. And at the end, he asked the magic question, do you think I am or could become an alcoholic? I said, son, I don't even know you. I wouldn't know you if I fell on you. I never saw you with a glass in your hand, but I know this. I like string beans. But I don't call radio stations at 11:30 at night and ask some total stranger if I got a problem with them. Of course the kid has a problem with his drinking. I call it alcoholism. You know what an alcoholic is? My definition is based on a self-evident truth. You don't prove self-evident truths, they're self-evident. For example, what causes problems is one because it causes problems. Now, I can't explain that, neither can you. You buy it or you don't. There's a hole in the sidewalk in the front of your house. And in the last 4 years, you have tripped and busted your leg 6 times. Now, I'd like to submit this for your serious intellectual consideration. The hole is a problem. Fill it up. You know what we do? We sit on a porch with our leg in a cast, and we intellectualize about causes. Well, the reason I broke my leg last week was because it was dark. The time before that, I tripped over a roller skate and fell into the hole. The intellectual sits on a porch with both legs in cast. He's smart. Listen to him. This is a rainy area of the country. The soil is very porous. When the rain hits the soil, it makes it soggy, and it eroded, and it ate. Fill the hole up, jerk, or you're going to break your leg again. Now, please, you want to know what an alcoholic is? An alcoholic is somebody whose drinking makes problems. An alcoholic is somebody whose drinking makes problems. It's that simple. I don't care how serious the problems are. I don't care how far apart they are. I don't care how early they are. If the drinking causes trouble, it is. Get rid of the drinking, or the trouble will increase. Remember the marvelous story of the Emperor's Clothes? This man wanted the most beautiful suit in the kingdom. He couldn't get it, so he pretended he had it, and he announced it to the whole kingdom that he had the most beautiful suit in the world. And one day, without a stitch on, he hopped on a horse and drove through the kingdom. And all the PhDs were sitting on the wall saying, "Look at that beautiful jacket. Aren't those lovely shoes?" And a little kid says, "He's naked." A little kid can spot things that we intellectualize about. All right, what are some of the early symptoms that indicate this illness? Number one, lying. Ladies and gentlemen, we speak of sexual aberration and unnatural acts. They pale into insignificance compared with a lie. You know what a lie is? It's a prostitution of the mind. That is unnatural. Lie about your drinking, you have a drinking problem. I'm not talking about the verbal lie. "George, have you been drinking?" He says, "No, honey," and passes out. All right, we know that's a lie. What I'm talking about is living the lie. Have you ever functioned in such a way as to convince people you're not drinking when you're drinking? An alcoholic who drinks in the morning gets onto an elevator and holds his breath for 91 floors so you won't smell it. He's known as the blue variety. Take a non-alcoholic who's been drinking in the morning. He steps on an elevator. You say, "You've been drinking?" He says, "Yeah, I just came from a wedding reception." Why? I use one question to diagnose alcoholism. One question. Do normal drinkers do this? If the answer is no, you're talking about abnormalcy. Gulping and sneaking drinks. Case in point, the closet drinker. I'm going to slam you in the head with the obvious now. Do you know a normal eater who goes into a closet to eat a Clark bar? I know a few abnormal eaters who do that. If any of you men were to go home tonight and see your wife sneak out of the dining room, into the bathroom, open the toilet tank, pull out a bottle of milk and drink 3 shots, you'd have her committed. Alcoholics drink this way all the time. We laugh at them. And then there's weak bladder Willie. He's the guy who has to go to the bathroom 8 or 9 times before lunch on a Monday. Everybody, watch the reaction. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to see attitudes, our own included? Watch what happens when old Willie or his female counterpart, the secretary, gets up to go to the John. We all know why. She's got a hangover, right? But you don't drink at your desk. So she picks up the purse with the bottle in it and heads for the lavatory. Guess what we do? We wink, we nudge, and we giggle. Girl has a terminal disease, and we think it's funny. All you have to do is ask your question, do normal drinkers drink in the toilet? Not usually. Where are you going, Henry? Get a martini. Excuse me. You don't do that. Normal drinkers don't do that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why do we fail to recognize the disease in its early stages? One of the most prevalent misconceptions about alcoholism on earth. If an alcoholic is still functioning, he can't be one. See, when that girl gets back to her desk, she's the most efficient secretary in the building. So we don't diagnose it, we let her die. Number 3, alcoholism is addiction to alcohol. We know very little about addiction. We know 2 things, precious little else. Number 1, all addiction externalizes itself in compulsive use. The alcoholic drinks the way he drinks because he can't not drink that way. It has nothing to do with willpower. Nothing to do with willpower. He can't help it. The normal drinker can't understand this because he doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. Why don't you just stop at 3? You know if you drink more than that, you're going to get fired. And he winds up drunk. We can't understand that. But once you grasp the nature of addiction, that the addict uses compulsively, you've had it. If you do not grasp that notion, you will never, ever understand the alcoholic. Once you do grasp that notion, you can almost predict his irrational behavior. So when somebody comes up to you and says, why, she was drunk at her daughter's graduation, you say, of course she was. That's what's wrong. Alcoholism is addiction to alcohol. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if there are any of you here who can't understand alcohol addiction, try any of the other four. There are 5 basic addictions: narcotics, alcohol, food, gambling, and work. And there's only one that isn't serious: the work addict, the compulsive cleaner. You ever been in a home that's so clean looks like nobody lives there or would want to? You're sitting there and the hostess will empty the ashtray 19 times in a half hour. And you don't smoke. You feel guilty about having your feet on the floor and there's nowhere else to put them. You know. All right. Those things are a little bit funny. The other addictions are perfectly serious. The alcohol addict drinks alcohol because he can't not drink alcohol. Number 4. I want to help. I see he's got it. He has no control over it. What do I do? Confront the alcoholic with the fact of his illness. How should the confrontation be made? By the right person with the right words at the right time in the right place. What are they? I don't know. If I did, I could save a nation. But I can tell you that I would like to discuss confrontation in general. Number 1, there are a lot of people who are recovered alcoholics who say out of this side of their mouths, yes, alcoholism is a disease. I wish those dumb doctors knew it. It's an illness of body, mind, emotion, and soul. And yet out of this side of their mouths they say, but I'm not going to help him until he makes a rational decision about his health and asks me to help him. If you have a 5-year-old who needs dental care and is afraid or doesn't realize about dentistry, and he doesn't want to go, you grab him and you take him. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a myth about coercion and the alcoholic. Yes, you can force an alcoholic into treatment. It's just that you can't force him to respond to it. I don't want to hear this garbage about leading horses to water and not making them drink. I know that. But you can lead them there, let them smell the water, and make them thirsty. Who is the right person? Preferably someone in authority. The boss pulls the employee in and says, go into treatment or seek new employment. He says, yes, sir. Let me tell you something about a confrontation. It does not just point out what is wrong. You have a drinking problem. It also offers a possible solution. I know where you can get help, and I'll take you there. You see, if you just tell me I have a problem and stop there, I'm going to learn 2 things about you. You're moralizing and you're condescending. And you're going to learn something about me. I won't be listening. Tell me where I can get help. And if you've been to a few meetings yourself, you'll know where to take me. What are the right words? I don't know. It's a studied, judgmental thing. I know a man whose life was saved by a son whom he adored. He came home drunk one night, and the kid said, Dad, you stink. 3 words saved a man's life. Saved his life. He could have said it the night before and been cursed for his pains. The right place, I don't know, but you don't degrade a sick person by bawling him out in a room full of people. I know that much. You don't talk to him when he's drunk. He's all drugged up. The best time to get any alcoholic is when he's in pain. Ladies and gentlemen, pain is God's greatest gift to the alcoholic. No alcoholic is more blessed than the one who arrives at that point in his life where he wakes up in the morning, looks into a mirror, and experiences an overwhelming desire to puke because he can't stand what he's looking at. That is a gift. Pain is the greatest gift that God gives alcoholics. You know what's behind that? This is the underlying principle. When you hurt bad enough to want to quit hurting, you will do something to stop the pain. You know that toilet seat that has that opening in the front? I'm serious. That was invented by an alcoholic who got tired of getting hit in the back of the neck with it. Number 5, make the alcoholic responsible for his behavior. I'm not talking about moral guilt, I'm talking about legal responsibility. Here's a kid who hits a baseball and it goes through a window. He goes next door and he says, Miss Smith, I hit that ball, I'm sorry. She says, I forgive you. That'll be $12.98. You pay for the glass. AA says made a list of persons we had harmed, became willing to make amends to them all, made direct amends. So the therapy of AA, I have found out from hundreds of AA members, backs me up in this. Make the alcoholic responsible for his behavior. Why, ladies and gentlemen, what is the underlying principle here? Again, it's the simplest thing on earth. Every time you pick up the tab for the alcoholic, you just bought him his next drunk. It doesn't make sense. Every time a wife makes good a bouncy check, she just gave him permission to write another one. It doesn't make sense. Alcoholism is a family disease, and families need treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, it was in Newsweek magazine in the medicine department not too overly long ago. They are switching now from one-on-one therapy to family therapy. Most people are members of a family. Because there are a few who are not. There are loners around. But most people belong to a family, and every problem in that family affects the whole family. Families need treatment. I've met several men who have doctorates in family therapy, and they do nothing but that. Over 50% of recovered alcoholics come from an alcoholic parent or two. Let me show you how sick the non-alcoholic member of an alcoholic family can get. I know a couple back in Maryland. I know them very well. I've eaten in their home. At the height of his drinking, he allowed her to believe it was her fault, and she believed it too. She's very timid at best. That woman was reduced to being a robot. She would not hang her clothes except at 2 a.m. in the dark. She didn't want people to look at her. She used to scotch tape the blinds on the first floor of her house so the neighbors couldn't look in and see that he was gone. Her 5-year-old used to tell her what to put on the table for meals. Non-alcoholics who live with alcoholics become as sick or sicker than the alcoholics. Case in point, a family that I know, the alcoholic husband has gone. He left 8 years ago. The mother is strong. She's a nurse. She went back to work. She supported the family, paid the mortgage, etc., etc., etc. She is so full of bitterness and hostility that he is still the sole topic of her conversation. Every word out of her mouth is negative, critical. What's so tragic? She's raising 4 kids. It is my opinion that the family needs treatment. Back at home, I know a man who belongs to AA. He's a 75-year-old pharmacist. He has about 30 years of sobriety. 3 years ago, his 50-year-old son came into treatment. And since then, his 3 kids came into treatment. One was 16, one was 19, and one is 28. On and on. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what causes alcoholism. I only know that it is caused. What can we do about it? How do we treat the whole family? By knowing all of the resource people in the community and using them. Get to know your alcoholism resources. And any one single person who believes that he alone can get an alcoholic completely well is a fool. Alcoholism is the most complete illness known, body, mind, emotion, and soul. And it takes a network of people to get the job done. Yes, the surgeon saves your life, but he has an anesthesiologist and 6 nurses to help him. And he's got post-operative care up there on the ward after you come out of surgery. It takes a network of people to get a family well. I believe, from what I have learned over the years, that AA is the best treatment for alcoholism. It's the only one that works the way it works. It works best for most. They have an 800,000 recovery number to prove it. Al-Anon and Alateen are for the spouses and friends and the children of alcoholics. The basic notion of all of these disciplines is peer therapy. All of these therapies are the most pragmatic and practical on earth. They were brought into being by desperate people who were concerned with continuing to breathe. And so the therapy that they brought into being is eminently practical and works. And the last is purely personal. There are a lot of people working in the world of the alcoholic day after day and hour after hour, and they watch more people die than get well. It is estimated by the United States government there are about 10 million alcoholics in the country, There are less than 1 million recovered. You figure it out. It can be the most discouraging and disheartening work on the face of the earth. It takes infinite patience and tolerance and unbelievable devotion. And there's only one thing that stands in the way, and that's discouragement. I was coming out of the theater at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey, and a master sergeant stopped me. His name was Lee something or other. He said, "I'm a Baptist minister, and when my 20 years in the service is over, I'm going back home, and I intend to dedicate my life to alcoholics." I said, "That's rather strange for a Baptist, Lee." I said, "How come?" He said, "My father and my brother both died alcoholic deaths." And I could see what was in his mind. Their lives were wasted, and they were lost, and I'm going to do something to make up for it. I said, "Lee, did it ever dawn on you that God asked them to carry their sickness to the grave instead of getting well before they will get their sobriety after death? People die of cancer and we weep for them. People die of alcoholism, we say, what a wasted life." I can't prove this, ladies and gentlemen, but I believe it, and I told him this. I said, "Did it ever dawn on you that the alcoholic who dies drunk helps to buy sobriety for those who get well on earth?" He lit up like a Christmas tree. He said, "I never thought of that." I said, "Well, it's about time you did. It's about time you did." Ladies and gentlemen, if I did not believe that no alcoholic who dies drunk dies in vain, then my whole life as a priest is a waste, and the whole concept of the brotherhood of man is a joke. I just believe that those who die drunk have bought sobriety for the rest of us. I also believe this, that every single human being is capable, before he dies, of saving another human life. I can't prove that. I just believe it. And once you, by trying some of these things, have had your hand in the saving of another human life, you're caught up in it and you're addicted to alcoholics forever. It's the most gratifyingly beautiful experience on the face of the earth. I had a 35-year-old sailor on the island of Guam come up and shake my hand. He said, "Thank you for saving my life." I had a beautiful black lady in Braintree, Massachusetts, in a high school auditorium say, "My name is Edna. Thank you for saving my life." A 22-year-old sailor in Norfolk, Virginia came up to me after a meeting one night, shook my hand. He said, "I just had to touch you," and he hugged me. He said, "I think I'm going to cry." So, of course, I did. I can go to my grave on that, continuing. I never look at those who don't make it except with a prayer. That never discourages me at all. Ladies and gentlemen, I simply believe that God gives his goodness through pain as well as through pleasure. And what makes the victory of one life saved so precious is that it came through pain. And because of that, that is what I wish you this evening. I do not wish you joy without a sorrow, nor endless day without the healing dark, nor brilliant sun without the restful shadow, nor tides that never turn against your bark. I wish you faith and strength and love and wisdom, goods, gold enough to help some needy one. I wish you songs, but also blessed silence and God's sweet peace when every day is done. Thank you so much, and good night.